You know what's the least important part of taking a great photo? Gear. The vision you have and the work you put into realizing it are far more critical. That's not to say gear doesn't matter, just that it's best used in service of something larger, not obsessed over. That's why this guide doesn't get too deep into the weeds of megapixel counts, sensor sizes, and pixel peeping. All these cameras are capable of producing amazing images. Which one is right for you depends more on your needs than the size of the sensor. But choosing the right one can be confusing. I've spent the past year testing dozens in all kinds of shooting scenarios to come up with what I think are the best choices for different types of photographers. At number 1 we got the best for most people, Sony a7 III. It's not the latest model, but the Sony a7 III remains a fantastic camera. The 42 megapixel full-frame sensor offers incredibly sharp images with excellent dynamic range and enough shooting speed for most of us, sports and wildlife pros, look elsewhere. It's compact and lightweight enough to carry all day without back strain, and the grip is comfortable in your hand. The 5-axis image stabilization means you can handhold it in lower light, and the 4K video is very nearly full frame thanks to oversampling. All autofocus modes work well, even with adapted lenses, which gives the a7 III an edge over competitors when it comes to lens selection. You can invest not only in Sony glass, but Canon, Minolta, and others as well. What I don't like about it, or any other Sony, is the labyrinthine menu system. Luckily there are enough customizable buttons that it's not too difficult to set things up, so you never need to dive into the menus. Specs: 42 megapixel full-frame sensor, 10 frames per second, FPS, with full AF, 4K 30 FPS video, dual South Dakota cards, another option. If you don't need the 42 megapixel sensor, the a7 III, note the lack of the R in the name, is another solid choice, and it's frequently on sale. At number 2 we got the best on a budget, Fujifilm X-T4 camera. Fujifilm's X-T4 is one of the best values in the camera market. Fujifilm uses APS-C sensors, which are smaller than the full-frame sensors in the rest of the cameras in this guide, but the images are every bit as sharp. The X-T4 has in-body image stabilization and significant autofocus improvements compared to its predecessor. There's also a clear division between photo and video mode, so you can easily switch back and forth. The X-T4 also offers a fully articulating rear touchscreen, something you won't find in either of the Sony cameras. The camera body's design is reminiscent of film cameras, and perhaps the best thing about it is how seldom you need to use digital controls. ISO, shutter speed, exposure compensation, and shooting modes are all accessible via physical dials. Finally, Fujifilm's excellent line of lenses is surprisingly affordable relative to some of the others on the list, making this one of the least expensive systems to invest in. My only real gripe is the grip. It's on the small side for a body of this size. Specs: 26 megapixels trans APS-C sensor, 15 FPS with full AF, 4K 60 FPS video, dual South Dakota cards. At number 3 we got the megapixel madness, Sony a7 IV. Sony's a7 IV uses a 61 megapixel full-frame sensor. From a pure resolution standpoint, it is unmatched, unless you opt for medium format cameras. If that's not enough, there's a 16-shot high-resolution mode that can create 240MP images, so long as your subject is static, e.g., a landscape. The dynamic range is outstanding, and the ability to recover detail in the shadows is something you'll only believe once you do it yourself. I was able to pull up shadows in my RAW editor by as much as 5 stops with no more noise than if I had shot at the corresponding ISO in the first place. While the still images the a7 IV produces are frankly remarkable, its video chops are not of the same caliber. That's not to say its specs are bad, but there are more capable video cameras, if that's your focus. Other downsides are its price, and its RAW files are huge, around 125 megabytes per image. If you buy one, pick up some extra hard drives too. Specs: 61 megapixel full-frame sensor, 10 FPS with full AF, 12-bit RAM, 6 FPS for 14-bit RAW, 4K 30 FPS video, dual South Dakota cards. At number 4 we got one for my Nikon fans, best for Nikon fans, Nikon Z6 II. The Nikon Z6 II is Nikon's answer to the Sony a7 III, and it is a good answer for dedicated Nikon shooters. The 24-megapixel full-frame sensor has excellent dynamic range, and the phase detect autofocus system is one of the best I've used. Video quality is also excellent, with 10-bit 422N log output possible over HDMI. The Nikon Z6 II is also the most comfortable camera to hold on this list. Although this will depend somewhat on the size of your hands, the grip is larger and more generously spaced than on the Sony or Fujifilm cameras. The Z-series lens system is also intriguing for its wider base mount, which allows more light to the corners of the sensors. The benefits of this can be seen in the incredibly fast 58mm f/0.95 lens, manual focus, and also the surprisingly small 50mm f1.2. If you've got a lot of legacy Nikon glass you want to keep using, there's an f2Z mount adapter available for $250. The only thing I don't like is the strange dual card system that supports two different types of storage cards. Specs: 24 megapixel full frame sensor, 12 fps with full AF, 4K 30 fps video, XQD Express, Type B, and South Dakota card slot. Other options: the original Z6 is still a great camera that you can get for a little less. Its processing power is not as speedy, and it only has one XQD slot. Alternatively, if you want more resolution, there's the Z7 II, which is very nearly identical to the Z6 II except it has a 42 megapixel sensor. It's more expensive at $3,000. At number 5 we got the best for Canon fans. Before we go to number 5, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support a young creator out. Back to number 5, we got the Canon EOS R. The Canon EOS R is a mirrorless for people who love their DSLRs. It's a hefty beast with a solid feel that reminds me of what I used to love about film cameras. Even the on-off switch is made of metal. The sensor is typically Canon, which is to say sharp, with good contrast and the characteristic Canon color rendering. It's slightly warmer in tone than some of the others here. The phase detect autofocus is fast and accurate. One thing I really like is when you change lenses, there's a cover that swings out to protect the sensor from dust. The exception is if you have an adapter and you remove the lens, but not the adapter. Every camera in this list would benefit from adopting this feature. The R-mount lens system uses a very wide base diameter, like the Nikon system, and achieves similar results. There are fast R lenses around. The better news for those already invested in Canon glass is that there's a $99 adapter that will let you affix just about any older Canon glass to the R. Specs: 30 megapixel full frame sensor, 8 fps with autofocus, 4K 30 fps video, dual South Dakota card slots. If you made it this far, comment your favorite fruit below, and I will see you in the next one.